it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in.
That kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself trying to shut down.
What did I do wrong?
Legitimate
I'm not shutting you down,
and
Robert. We've been talking
debate.
about it for at least 5 minutes.
It is, because what you are implying is that you can't say comments like that. And if we live in a country where politicians or members of the public cannot debate whether there is due integration or not, then that does give fuel for extremists. That does give rise to the far right. So you must not take fair and reasonable comments and try and use them to shut down a debate that this country needs to have. We have been having this debate off and on for decades, and every time people try and raise these issues in a fair and reasonable way, with all due respect, journalists like you pop up and try and knock those people down. And that is the reason why we don't live in an integrated country.
It's not my opinion necessarily,
is the reason
I mean,
why,
Robert, because it's also
the reason why
the mayor
terrorist
of
attacks
the West
happen,
Midlands said, Andy
because
Street,
people are
you were
not
wrong.
stepping up and taking the action that's needed.
Andy Street said that you were wrong as well, but we can move on.
Sometimes a sentencing decision in two-tier Britain is so egregious that it's almost unfathomable. Like, that can't be right, can it? Have we really lost our fucking minds to this extent? So, for example, Tommy Robinson being locked up in solitary for 18 months for a piece of independent journalism, while Hugh Edwards didn't spend a single minute behind bars. But perhaps nothing has left me as gobsmacked as this shocking story today being ignored by Britain's captured, corrupt and crooked regime media. The white Epping protesters, and yes, it is relevant that they were white, who were expressing rightful anger and indignation in Essex over this bloke, the illegal migrant who sexually assaulted a teenage schoolgirl after just 8 days in the country, have all gone to jail for longer than Habush Kabuto, the despicable cretin who they were protesting against. And yes, a judge accused them of racism. Now, you'll remember the protests in July, right? We covered them here before anyone in the mainstream media. Essex really did become ground zero of the migrant hotel uprising. And on one night, and it was this particular night, and I'm sure you remember this, the police escorted in and then shipped out, as if they were VIP guests, these hard-left Antifa non-locals from the Stand Up to Racism organisation. And yes, it did spark a small degree of violence. Minor incidents that marred what was otherwise an entire summer of non-violent protests led by the likes of the Pink Ladies in Essex. But look, I think locals had a reason to be angry, right? For months, they had been gaslit about the criminals living at the Bell Hotel in Epping, who they knew were responsible for systematic sexual assaults on women in their local high streets. And sometimes you just need one moment. And for this tight-knit community, who realised they were no longer safe, when Habush Kabuto sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl at lunchtime just 8 days after arriving in the country on a small boat. And I would say that was the spark that lit a fuse. Because Kabuto, right, had been here for such a limited period of time, could be from Ethiopia, Eritrea, or Jamaica, who knows? But what we do know is that we are now paying for him to spend a year, or more likely 6 months, in prison. But shockingly, we also now know, after yesterday's court ruling, that that is less time behind bars than the protesters will serve. in yet another example of the judicial system being used to shut up the little people, you and me, the little people worried about the destruction of our country. They want to terrify us into silence, just like they tried with Lucy Connolly, with an activist judge saying he is satisfied that the trio, the protesters who you see there, and that their acts were racially motivated. So what does that mean? Does racially motivated mean we are not happy about a new migrant from God knows where committing a sexual assault against a teenage girl? Because if so, 99% of the country, regardless of their country, thinks that's wrong. Here's the report from the Sun newspaper. Let's go through this together. 3 asylum seeker riots men have been jailed for longer than the sex assault migrant who they were protesting against outside the controversial Bell Hotel. Dean Smith, Stuart Williams and Martin Pegram, locked up for 6 years between them, were the first people to be sentenced for violent disorder outside the asylum seeker hotel in Epping, Essex. They were among around 500 furious locals who descended on the Bell when Ethiopian national Habush Kabuto was living on July the 17th. Fury erupted after the 41-year-old was charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and an adult woman just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat across the English Channel. Kabuto was locked up for a year last month, but each of the 3 protesters were sentenced yesterday to longer jail terms than he received. Chelmsford Crown Court heard that police officers were subjected to sustained attacks for over 4 hours as the demonstration turned violent. Painter and decorator Williams, 36, from Epping, was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months after kicking out at an officer. Kicking out, interesting definition that, and climbing the roof of a hotel. Pegram, 33, a roofer of Loughton, Essex, will spend 2 years and 2 months behind bars for booting a cop, kicking out at other officers and throwing a can at them. Waitrose worker Smith, 51, also from Epping, was jailed for 1 year and 10 months after punching a police shield, not a police officer, but a police shield, and shoving cops. But Judge Jamie Sawyer said he was satisfied this was racially motivated, at least in part. He added, "Each of you, what you did went beyond protest, and that became criminal when you acted as you did." Now, regular Outspoken viewers will know that I'm very clear on this. I abhor all violence. It's not a grey area for me, it's black and white. Yet at the pro-Hamas hate marches, I've seen constant examples of the police being kicked out at, or police shields being shoved, or objects being thrown at them with absolutely no action taken. So forgive me if I see this sentence for what it is. A blatant political warning to white working-class patriots to stay in line. You will get very different treatment in court from your opponents. And indeed, the man who I believe should be leading the Tories, or a major part of Reform UK in government, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, has today directly accused, and this is very significant in light of the sentencing, 35 judges of pro-migrant bias. On Talk this morning, he became the only politician brave enough to call out the 2-tier sentences in Essex Watch.
There's a case today that we've looked at on the show already, and I know we're going to talk about judges in a moment. Case today of 3 men who were arrested for committing disorder outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. All 3 of them sentenced yesterday by a Crown Court judge to longer in prison than the man that they were protesting against, who of course was an Ethiopian by the name of Kibatu, who was jailed for less time, Hadush Kibatu, for less time for attempted sexual assault and sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, it doesn't. Look, these are examples of the growing sense of 2-tier justice in this country, where people can be sent to prison for a sentence of 31 months for a reprehensible tweet, but then a bloke in Hull who's got 100,000 child sexual abuse images on his laptop is told by a judge that he deserves a second chance. Do you remember that guy outside the Turkish consulate the other day who grabbed a knife, charged out onto the street and started slashing a man who was burning a Quran on the street, and he spat on him and kicked him, and he was let off without even going to jail? I mean, something is going badly wrong in our criminal justice system where we're seeing these things happening.
Yeah.
We've got to change this. We want consistency so that people can have absolute respect about the independence of our judiciary and the way that you're going to get treated equally under the law.
Indeed, Jenrick called out two-tier justice on stage in his conference speech in what I think was the only moment of any hope for the Tory party this week. If you're enjoying what we're doing here on Outspoken, please consider joining our thriving community over on Substack, www.outspoken.live. You can sign up completely for free, but Substack is so important to me. It is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. Plus, you get to communicate directly with me. Head on over www.outspoken.live, enter your email address and sign up today.
What have I got in this box? Well, don't worry. I'm not about to do a Michael Fabricant tribute act. This is actually serious. For those of you at the back of the room who can't see, I have here a judge's wig. It's something we should all respect and revere. When a judge dons a wig, it signifies the transition from their everyday personality, their identity, to that of a legal arbiter. It's a visual representation of the judge's role as an unbiased mediator, focused solely, only, on upholding the law and delivering justice. An unbiased mediator, that is what a judge should be. And that is what the vast majority of judges in our legal system do. They wear the wig, they respect and revere it, and that is why, in turn, our legal system is respected and revered all around the world. But we've got a problem.
Now, I caveat all of what I'm about to say by making it clear that I think the Conservative Party probably is finished. I can't ever see a day where I would personally vote for them again, and I didn't at the last election. But that was a great speech. And the Tories must just make Robert Jenrick leader now and be done with it. It was funny, actually. I had just been last week to a New Culture Forum event, and I was walking through Westminster on my way home, and I actually bumped into Robert, who was on a run, and he showed me his phone, and he was watching other famous conference speeches. This particular one was delivered by Tony Blair, because he knew that today's speech had to be one of the moments of his career. And it was, because I believe he is now the only hope of saving the Conservatives from total political extinction. And the worrying thing is the fact the party can't see that. Indeed, it probably proves it isn't worth saving in the first place. But the thing for me about Robert Jenrick is he is shifting the Overton window on so many levels. He is moving Reform UK to the right. That matters. And by calling out our broken justice system, I think he's going to do something incredibly important, and it is something I support regardless of party politics, because as it stands, we are all at risk of being locked up by these activist judges.
The country has some of the best lawyers, barristers and judges of anywhere in the world, but we have a problem. There's a small minority of judges with links to political causes that are compromising the independence of the judiciary. Until now, they've been kept a secret, but the research conducted by my team and I have uncovered it, and what I'm about to tell you will shock you. Over 30 immigration judges who sit in courts and tribunals like this one have links to Open Borders charities. And these are the men and women who get to decide who stays and who goes.
And what I really respected is that Jenrick then brought the receipts.
Let me give you an example. Before his appointment, Judge Symes volunteered for bail for immigration detainees. Even after his appointment, he takes public positions on social media on illegal migration proposals. And he even advertises his judicial office to drum up business for his immigration advisory services. Or take Judge Heaven. She spent 5 years before she became a judge volunteering for bail for immigration detainees. And even after becoming a judge, she took to social media to celebrate the defeat of the government's Rwanda plan. These people should have no place in our justice system. But my research has shown these are not isolated examples. The line between adjudication and activism is being blurred every day. If judges want to step into the political space, they should stand for Parliament. It's time for transparency and for reform, so the public can have confidence that their judges are truly independent.
But we know what happens, right? We know what happens when there is a threat to the deep state or the establishment, be it from Tommy Robinson or Katie Hopkins. They try and take them out by whatever means necessary. I mean, Nigel Farage was in court today, for example, giving evidence against one of the migrants who has directly threatened his security. And a takedown attempt is now what's happening with Robert Jenrick too, which is why I think we should actually be very interested in what he is doing. And you'll note, by the way, I haven't spoken about the Conservative Party conference all week. I think it's been totally irrelevant, but I don't think Jenrick's speech was irrelevant. And that's why, ahead of the delivery, The Guardian newspaper, via a leaked recording, tried to make out that Robert Jenrick was a racist. Watch.
This leaked recording which has come out today, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm sure you don't think there's anything wrong with it, but have a listen to this.
In Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter, and it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
And I think a lot of people would sympathise with what you just said there. We were speaking to a Muslim lady the other day who said that she absolutely accepts that there are Muslim ghettos in this country.
Yeah, well, I don't resile from those comments at all, and obviously it was The Guardian who stuck them out there.
Of course.
We want to live in a country which is well integrated, where people are living side by side. We don't want segregated pockets of our towns and cities. We don't want ghettos in this country. I want my kids to be growing up alongside their fellow Brits of all skin colours and faiths. And I'm afraid that hasn't happened in recent years. This is a problem that's got worse in my lifetime, not better. In the last 20 years, there have been at least 6 major reports into the integration failures of our country, including by very, very prominent people like Baroness Louise Casey. People don't do anything about it.
And of course, this is absurdly hypocritical coming from The Guardian, given The Guardian itself runs articles headlined, "Why are big festivals like Glastonbury so white?" The elite class all jumped on board. The grievance train beep beep as they always do, with Dan Hodges posting, "We can and need to have a debate about integration, but if Robert Jenrick can't do that without resorting to simplistic and lazy I didn't see a white face rhetoric, then he's got no business being in politics." So, okay, he should just leave politics altogether, according to Dan Hodges. Narinder Kaur added, Robert Jenrick makes an undeniably racist remark, and Kemi Badenoch rushes to contextualise it. This is exactly why political parties use women of colour to push through blatant racism and elevate them to senior positions only to serve as the black-brown faces of conservative bigotry. Sanitising their racism, I'd add reform, but they don't have any women of colour, as far as I'm aware. This was the moment on the British Bashing Corporation Narinder was referring to.
It's a factual statement. If he said he didn't see another white face, he might have been making an observation. There's nothing wrong with making observations. But what he and I both agree with is that there are not enough people integrating. There are many people who are creating separate communities. I'm very worried about what is happening in Birmingham. I'm very worried. Well, I wasn't there, so I can't say how many faces he saw. But the point is that there are many people in our country who are not integrating. I heard that one of the MPs of that area was accusing him of racism. I completely disagree with that. I want to make that very clear. In fact, I'm quite worried about these sectarian MPs who've been elected in Birmingham. Very, very divisive politics. People who are more interested in talking about Gaza than what's happening in the UK.
Okay, but this is hilarious, right? So first the BBC tried that hit job. Then, look at this from Christian Calgie. So Jenrick's comments trying to whip up outrage. They went to interview ethnic minority locals and they agreed with every word. Obviously, it's buried right at the end of the article. So I went to the end of the article and this is brilliant. This is so brilliant. Malaj Khan agreed with the description of the area as a slum and said he was not offended by the MP's comments because he felt they were true. Mr. Khan said he only saw Asian and black people, adding, "I never saw a white face around here." He said that there were white people in the area, but they tended not to be British. So that was all the BBC could find in their failed hit piece on Robert Jenrick. I was actually impressed too to see senior Tory Claire Coutinho not give in to the hate mob. She wrote, "We're a majority white country. If you walk through an area and don't see a single white face, it is a sign that integration has failed. We cannot become a series of isolated enclaves with communities that do not know each other. That is a divided nation, not a strong one." But of course, it was absolutely no surprise that it was Sly News that tried the ultimate hit job on Jenrick today, but their hopeless, hard leftist presenter Kamali Melbourne was actually, in the end, left totally humiliated. Watch. But first, you know how often I talk about the need for free speech to be protected, but I've been increasingly thinking of the need too for personal protection from snoopers, from bad actors, from hackers, all online. And I'm delighted to tell you I've found the fail-safe solution. And this virtual private network, or VPN, is a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. So I want to introduce you to Surfshark, an incredible, easy-to-use service that encrypts all your internet traffic, meaning your online activities stay safe so you can shop, you can stream, you can browse, you can conduct your banking in complete privacy online. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe. It also allows you to access your favourite entertainment and news shows and international streaming services like Hulu, iPlayer, HBO Max, Peacock, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+, and if your favourite shows are geo-blocked, within seconds you can be watching as if you're in another country. Really helpful, by the way, for traveling for work or on holiday. I did this recently when I went to Barbados. I could still get all of my favorite content from home using Surfshark, including sports. Plus, it's an insurance policy against creeping censorship in so many countries, which do block particular services like Rumble, for example. What Surfshark allows you to do is watch anything, anytime, anywhere. True freedom. Plus, and I didn't know this, a VPN can save you money, because you can get the best deals from websites that actually change their prices depending on which part of the world you are buying from. You can use Surfshark on unlimited devices, meaning your entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. And there are over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, meaning a world of choice is at your fingertips with 24/7 customer service if this is your first time using a VPN. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. And this is super important. Surfshark is so confident that it is the best VPN in the world that you can give it a try for a full 30 days. And if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken right now for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. But now, back to the show.
You said you're putting your head above the parapet, but you'll know that that kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself trying to shut down.
What did I do wrong?
Legitimate
I'm not shutting you down, Rob, but we've been talking about it for at least 5 minutes.
It is, because what you are implying is that you can't say comments like that. And if we live in a country where politicians or members of the public cannot debate whether there is due integration or not, then that does give fuel for extremists. That does give rise to the far right. So you must not take fair and reasonable comments and try and use them to shut down a debate that this country needs to have. We have been having this debate off and on for decades, and every time people try and raise these issues in a fair and reasonable way, with all due respect, journalists like you pop up and try and knock those people down. And that is the reason why we don't live in an integrated country.
It's not my opinion necessarily,
is the reason
I mean,
why,
Robert, because it's also
the reason why
the mayor
terrorist
of
attacks
the West
happen,
Midlands said, Andy
because
Street,
people are
you were
not
wrong.
stepping up and taking the action that's needed.
Andy Street said that you were wrong as well, but we can move on.
He just had nothing left to say. I mean, he's a terrible presenter, right? But he had nothing left to say. So that is what we need. Frontline politicians pushing back at the ludicrous way the MSM throws around these terms far right or racist to shut down any debate. This was good too. Jenrick managed to ignore Emily Maitlis of the fake news agents 5 times at conference. Watch.
About this love-in with Lord Heseltine.
Look, I like all the Conservative greats, and he was someone who really fought for the party in the past. And my message to the conference today, amongst other things, was we've got to stand up and fight.
But he has raised
inspiration from people who fought the fight.
But he has raised concerns about some of the language over asylum.
Well, we don't agree on everything, and that's very clear. I want to secure our borders. I think a country that doesn't have strong borders is not a country at all. That's why we're leaving the European Convention on Human Rights.
And your reaction to the your reaction your reaction to the overnight reaction to your comments about those.
I was very clear that I want to live in a well-integrated country where people are living side by side, a strong sense of national togetherness. That's what we really want.
So a plea for diversity.
It's a plea for unity, actually. That's what matters to me.
Was your language wise? Was your language wise?
I really.
Was your language
to get through.
Removing activist judges. Can you just explain why that's
We actually also need some British politicians like Tony Abbott. So here's the ex-Aussie PM whose pluck and front did actually manage to stop the boats. And look at how he deals with the BBC.
On the border problem, as you say, should this party, if they're in government, do what Australia did, or is that not possible? Because you think of the amount of waters around Australia, it's not like the English Channel where there are basically no international waters.
That's correct, but you could certainly pick up people in the English Channel, hold them on some kind of a mothership, and send them back to the land from which they've come on some quiet and moonless night. And I think there are all sorts of things that a determined government could do to absolutely stop these boats once and for all.
But in Australia, obviously there was Pauline Hansel, but you didn't have Nigel Farage in Australia. He's a formidable challenge to the two main parties, isn't he?
Look, I don't deny that, but in the end, you've got to be able to implement policy. And I think that the Conservative Party here in Britain has 2 centuries of governmental experience. They've got the muscle memory to be a very effective government.
But I mean, what hope do we have when Tower Hamlets has now officially decided to declare the brilliant Pink Ladies and the excellent patriotic Raise the Colours campaign as far right? Watch this explanation from Lauren the Insider.
I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? Take my last fucking cent, government. Tax me more, but you will not take my free speech, and you will not weaponise people in power to try and brand the Pink Ladies right-wing extremists, right-wing terrorists. This is shocking. And why at 38, as a mother of 2, am I sat in my house thinking, I do not want to live in my country anymore because it is not safe for me, and it is not safe for my mum, and it is not safe for my grandma, and I've had enough.
And indeed, after 2 years of being targeted directly and brutally by the deep state for questioning the political narrative, yesterday Russell Brand appeared to admit defeat by seeming to pause his show.
So I'm going to take some time off and think about what to do next. I feel like, you know me, my ego will drag me back in front of a camera before too long. You know what I'm like. I'm going to take this opportunity to cultivate a deeper relationship with God, to reflect on what's happening in this culture, and to see how, you know what they say is where what you have to offer meets what the world needs. And if I have nothing to offer that the world needs, then that will take care of itself, won't it? I'll just maybe get a little cabin somewhere and be with my beautiful, beautiful children. Anyway, so I'm going to take some time off. We'll see. If the world needs my voice, it will find a way of getting it. Well, it's not like who knows, it might not be a long break. I'm going to have a little break. We'll have a little break and continue and pray because, it can't just be sort of this continual futile squabble.
Now, that's sad and worrying to me. And you'll know, if you've followed Outspoken for a long time, that I agree with Russell Brand on a lot. I disagree with Russell Brand a lot, but it is not the point. This is a man who, from the moment he decided to speak out against the official narrative, has just been battered and broken down by the deep state week by week, month by month, year by year, to the point where he looks like a goddamn broken man. Yes, he was very impacted by the death of Charlie Kirk, as were we all, but I just think what has happened to him, and of course he is going to face trial in this country, and let's hope that is a fair process. But it needs to be a wake-up call to a lot of people, because Russell Brand is just like the new Katie Hopkins or the new Tommy Robinson. I also have to ask an important question today. Why has Jihad al-Shami, our latest Islamist terrorist, so quickly slipped out of the headlines with only one intrepid reporter? And this will surprise you because I'm going to give this intrepid reporter a lot of credit today. He works for the left-wing Guardian, but he is called Josh Halliday, and I give him credit for his diligence for actually bothering to look into the very obvious warning signs that were yet again missed by the authorities before last week's deadly synagogue attack. He's done this, the other newspapers haven't, so well done. The headline: concerns about apparently fanatical interest in Islam shown by Jihad al-Shami's family member were reported, the Guardian has been told. So this is an important report, again, completely ignored by the rest of the media because it doesn't fit the narrative, but credit to Josh Halliday of The Guardian for going closer than any other mainstream journalist has. He reports neighbours of the Manchester synagogue attacker reported concerns to police about a family member being radicalised and attempting to preach the Quran to local children, The Guardian has been told. Police have said Jihad al-Shami did not appear to be known to counter-terrorism officials before he attacked a Heaton Park synagogue, leading to the deaths of 2 worshippers on Yom Kippur. However, people who knew the family said on Monday they had concerns about the apparently fanatical interest in Islam shown by the killer and another family member in recent years. One neighbour said everything changed during the COVID pandemic when Shami and the other relatives started wearing traditional Islamic dress, holding private gatherings in the garden, and attempting to preach the Quran on their quiet suburban street. A neighbour told The Guardian, "They just started wearing all the robes and everything. I thought one relative was being radicalised because he wouldn't speak to us for a bit. He was coming up the road preaching to kids about the Quran. It was quite intimidating. It was intrusive." The neighbour, who did not want to be named, said she was really concerned and reported it to Greater Manchester Police in the summer of 2020 or 2021. "I would never do that if I weren't concerned," she said. The disclosure, The Guardian reports, is likely to raise questions about the extent to which these concerns were investigated before the attack last Thursday. One witness reported hearing him shout, "This is what you're going to get for killing our children," as he attempted to break into the building armed with a knife. Shami was shot dead by police after the attack. They said the followers of Shami and the family would congregate in the family's front garden. They didn't have any white friends. I thought, what the heck is going on? It wasn't just praying in the garden, it was private and secret. Neighbours also claim that police had visited Shami's family home earlier this year, apparently because of safeguarding concerns. Shami told one resident a few months ago that his partner had apparently moved out. He apparently did not know where they were now living. The Guardian has also been told that Shami became reclusive after suffering what they describe as brain damage. Now, I don't like this angle, when he fell off a cliff about 20 years ago when he was a teenager, because this is the whole, it was a mental illness thing, it wasn't an ideology thing. Jihad had a bad accident, said one neighbour. He fell off a cliff and got airlifted to London. He had massive head injuries. It was horrific. You didn't see much of him after that. He became quiet and reclusive. The Guardian revealed on Friday that Shami was on police bail under investigation for an alleged rape when he attacked the synagogue about 2 miles from the family home last Thursday morning. And so kudos, congratulations, credit where it is due. I do wonder if the Guardian feels they can do this reporting because they are on the left, and maybe the rest of the mainstream media thinks that if they were to report the truth about what was going on at the Al-Shami home, which looked to me like very clear radicalisation listening to that report, they might be accused of being far right or racist. And we know what the police and the judiciary now spend most of their time on, attempting to scare white Christian Brits worried about the Islamist takeover of their country from protesting or posting on X. Now, the Superstar panel. And let me bring in Peter McElvenna, host of the Brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, and Alan Miller, who is the founder of the Together Declaration. So look, there's a huge amount to go at today, but I want to start, Alan Miller, with this breaking news from The Guardian, the left-wing Guardian, which has actually decided to look into Jihad al-Shami and not just accept what the police told us, which is that, oh, no, we had no evidence of any radicalisation and, he hadn't been reported to the Prevent programme, while not telling us, Alan Miller, that this is a bloke who was out on custody after a rape accusation, and now it appears had been reported to the police by neighbours for extremist behaviour. So yet again, Alan, we are not being told the full truth.
Well, I think it's true, Dan, that we're not being told the full truth. But I also think it's important that we focus on the specifics. Obviously, a charge of something is different to a conviction. So that's one thing that's there. And if we were to apply that rule to everyone, then it would be problematic under law. And it is important, in light of your comments and important discussion around the two-tier concerns, that it is universally applied to everyone. But I think where the big concern in Britain is that for a long time now, we've not been able to have even a discussion, as some as your coverage on what Robert Jenrick and others has been, about the significant challenges to Western democracy, the Enlightenment values of privacy and freedom, and tolerance and rights, and the attack and the assault on that, and the elevation of the idea that both at school and university that nothing Britain or the West has done has been any good. It's been all racist and disgusting and a self-hatred. And in that climate, and in the climate of our institutions as well, where DEI and ESG is promoted and elevated, the mere attempt to engage with some of these questions and address them gets you put into a certain category. And we face an existential question in Britain and I think internationally, which is that, are you for the values of the Enlightenment? Or are you opposed to them? And have we created a climate in which there's been a flattering of those who hate and despise those values? And I think that's the backdrop to what's going on. And I think the grave concern when we see a continuation of a two-tier approach to protesters or to, the judiciary, or to how things are covered in the media, and that we need an even-handedness and a kind of universal approach to that. And I think at the same time we need to get very real about everyone who wants to shut us down and suffocate us or terrify or terrorize us.
Absolutely, and I agree with all of that. I really do. But Peter McElvenna, at the end of the day, this was an Islamist terrorist who did kill 2 people, or at least led to the deaths of 2 people. I know there's some confusion over, did the police accidentally shoot one of the people behind the door? But at the end of the day, they wouldn't be dead if it wasn't for this man, Jihad al-Shami. And Peter, I put it to you that the mainstream media still spend their days, I mean, we heard it from the Sunday Times last week, trying to dig up information about Tommy Robinson's school days nearly 3 decades ago. Why are we not trying to find out everything about this man, Jihad al-Shami? I want to know. You know, if you know something, if you were at school with this guy, I want to know. I want to know how this man, who we gave everything to, right? We gave everything to, from Syria, comes to this country and turns on us. And I find it quite interesting that the only reporting about that is coming from The Guardian, because they're probably the people who aren't worried about being accused of being racist or far right.
No, exactly. And we have a problem with these pesky British citizens. Oh, sorry, someone born in Syria. Oh, someone born and steeped in the Islamic faith.
Yeah,
and then
Syrian. Can we just say Syrian? He is Syrian,
yes.
With a British passport, but Syrian.
So we welcomed him in. Our government, our institutions accepted this person in as someone who was positive for British society. But it was interesting, The Guardian, they were talking about the issues they had with jihad, and they referred twice to he was preaching the Quran to children and preaching the Quran on the streets. Is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, if you're going out preaching the Bible or preaching the Gospels, that could be a positive thing. That's what I would say. So they seem to insinuate preaching the Quran was a negative thing. And I find that interesting coming from The Guardian. They were dripping that in as a negative issue within him. And I think we would really want an open and proper debate. But of course, we can't have an open and proper debate because it's a fear of engaging, as Robert Jenrick said, of maybe those areas in society that don't want to integrate and have a ghettoized society. And only when we have an open conversation, maybe of the animosity between the Islamic faith and the Jewish faith that goes back 1400 years, maybe we would better understand the clash that we face and then be able to address that issue.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go wherever you are.